Welcome back to the Resilient Life Hacks podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Myers, and I'm here today with Maxwell Ivy, who has a very interesting and exciting story to share with us. He is also known as the blind blogger, and he has a background in carnival experience with his family, and he is an author and a speaker, a coach, podcaster, all kinds of things. And he is here to encourage us today to ask us, what's your excuse? Thank you so much for being here on the show with us today. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. And I especially appreciate you working my tagline into the intro, because the more people that say it and say it in conjunction with my name, the more likely I am to get hired or get paid.
Well, I love it. It's a great, here's what I'm doing with my life. What's your excuse? I think that's great motivation. That's great encouragement for people to get out there and do what it is they're doing and not let what they may perceive as a limitation hold them back. Because
exactly,
we all have those things where we're like, oh, I can't do this because I'm not that, or I'm not good enough, or whatever. And, I just love how you're just out there saying, forget all that. Just do it. Let's go.
Yeah. And, for those of y'all out there who don't know this, you're probably not going to tell them, but you're doing your podcast in the middle of a move where you went halfway across the country to a whole different kind of place. And while you're still unpacking your stuff, you're recording episodes. So to me, you're a perfect example of the what's your excuse mindset. And I just wanted to get that out there because, like I said, I knew you wouldn't say it.
Yeah, thanks. That's nice of you. Yeah, I actually scheduled a bunch of interviews before we moved. I tried to give myself a buffer of, okay, it'll take me about this long to get moved in. And then I started this week and I'm kind of like, whoa, I wish I'd given myself an extra week or two. But I'm like, I'll at least just try to get the background behind me somewhat neat and we'll go from there. Because I haven't set up my office space yet. So, but it's all good.
As a blind person, I wouldn't have known that your office space isn't set up yet.
Yeah.
So
see,
for a podcaster, that's the equivalent of a woman going out without makeup. I mean, it's a big deal, y'all.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't podcast or who aspire but haven't started your show yet, trust me, it is a big deal recording without fixing up your office space. Mm-hmm. So congratulations. So back to me. Mm-hmm. I grew up in a family of carnival owners. I also grew up knowing eventually I would lose some, if not all, of my vision to retinitis pigmentosa. Mm-hmm. I was lucky enough to graduate high school and college through effort and a lot of help from teachers and family. I also became one of the few legally blind Eagle Scouts in America.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. I worked with my family in the carnival business for about 15 years before my dad's death. And after he passed away, I could see that we weren't going to be able to keep the show going. So I said, Max, you better find something else to do. So I started helping other carnival owners sell their surplus rides online. And this was in 2007, before WordPress, before Wi-Fi, before Facebook. And I even had to learn how to hand code HTML to get my first website on the internet.
Oh, wow.
Yes, big deal.
Okay, that's what's your excuse right there. Everything's like plug and play today,
Oh yeah. I give thanks for WordPress every morning. I mean, WordPress is in my prayers, y'all, because I hand coded for 7 years. I wrote over 2 million lines of code, and trust me, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy's worst enemy. It's a nightmare, and it's one of those things. One character can cause your entire website not to run if it's one character on your homepage. So, and I've been there at 3:00 in the morning trying to go letter by letter and listening to it in my head, going, "Come on, where are you?" But that's another thing. But I had to learn how to code. I had to learn how to get people to list their equipment on my website. Setting fees and writing copy and pretty much doing all of it. Learning Facebook and social media as they came along. Building an email list, and just recording videos. It just seems like every so often there's something new. Blogging, podcasting, podcast interviews. And no, I don't do it all at the same time. I didn't start all of it at the same time. I've started different things over the years, and they've combined to where I'm at now. And very soon I'm going to have to be hiring some people to do some of the stuff that I do, so that I can do even more stuff that I love doing. But it's as a result of all this stuff, people started saying, Max, you're very inspiring. We would love it if you started sharing more of what it's like to be a blind entrepreneur. And at first I fought them. I said, no, I'm just a guy who shows up every day and works his butt off. to build a business to support his family. And they said, Max, the thing is, you show up when you have a perfect excuse not to. So we want to hear more. And that led to the blindblogger.net, because people were calling me the blind blogger for a couple of years. I finally started blogging and podcasting, and I've written 4 books, traveled the country solo. I've sang in public. And yeah, eventually I started my own podcast, the What's Your Excuse Show. I've managed to do a lot of this with the help from friends, family, strangers that I met on the internet, because I do 3 things. I've decided over the years to find solutions instead of making excuses. I have found the freedom to ask for help and accept help when offered. And I've become determined to find the positive in every aspect of my life. And those 3 things are very hard at first. They take effort, they take practice, they take repetition, and sometimes they take taking time away from everything else you do to sit and think and remember.
Those are great. I want to go back a little bit. It seems like you got handed a big dose of adversity right from the get-go. A lot of people don't have to deal with such a big thing at so young of an age. What was that like as a child, knowing that you would eventually lose your sight?
Well, I think it was harder for a lot of other people. I had several things in my favor. One, I grew up in a family of people who did stuff that didn't suffer people feeling sorry for themselves, and always believed the best thing for depression is work.
Yeah.
So, we're going to let you do stuff. And they put me in the cotton candy stand, boxing the popcorn, putting the butter on the popcorn, putting the syrup on the snow cake. I was working on the Midway at 4.5 years old.
Oh, wow.
Scrubbing canvases, carrying trash. I was big for my age, and I was a Carnegie kid. I also went to a great school. I'm honest enough to admit that in this country, what help you get as far as a person with a disability, whether that's a visible one like mine or an invisible one like ADHD, autism, etc., it all comes down to the wealth of the school district you live in. And I was blessed to live in a great district. Even though my family was not rich, a lot of the people that lived near me were. So I had great teachers. The special ed people didn't just want to kill time and graduate me. They wanted me to learn how to learn. A great assistant principal, a great principal. So a lot of people there. And then from 80 to 84, I was part of a scout troop for visually impaired boys, which was great. Every few months we'd go out in the woods and camp and have fires and do all the stuff other boys did. Over the years, either by direct teaching or just by, paying attention to what everybody else around me was doing, I learned that really I should just focus on things that I could do and live with whatever vision I had at the moment. And I actually think my vision loss, the way I lost it, is part of why I'm so successful now. And this is why. When you have RP, retinitis pigmentosa, it's a gradual degenerative disease. So in the course of, say, 4 or 5 years, I went from being able to read a regular print book in a dark room because I wasn't supposed to be awake reading, to having to read with bright lights, to having to have larger type books, using magnifiers, eventually using a closed circuit television to blow up the print, and then finally having to switch to Braille and audio for my sources of information. That was before the internet, when you could have a screen reader and go online and get all your stuff. But I had to adapt to my vision as it changed. And that, I think, taught me a lot about flexibility, adaptability, acceptance, and really just finding peace with what things are like now and not worrying about, well, things were great 2 years ago or things could be horrible next year. And so besides adaptability, I think it really taught me to be mindful, to be more in the moment than in the past or the future. And as a friend of mine once said, Max, you've learned a lot of lessons from your blindness, but I wouldn't be willing to pay that price to learn those lessons myself.
Wow, that's powerful. I like how you said that. You talked about what some people would label as a disability or a tragedy, and you're like, this was an opportunity to learn this adaptability gradually, and we can see now how that's impacting your life and how you're using that skill and coaching others on it. That's really neat.
Yeah, it is. I've been able to influence people by my example, by my blog posts and podcasts, and then also directly personal conversations and coaching, where a lot of people's problems is letting go of the past, accepting things they can do nothing about and focusing on things they can control a little bit. A lot of people are focused on themselves to the point that they can't hear the voices of good friends telling them, hey, this isn't great for you, or hey, there's a lot more inside you than you're seeing, and I would love to help you bring it out. One of the people I always like to mention is a woman named Adrienne Smith, who at one time was considered the blog commenting rock star, and she taught me a lot about online and building relationships and relationship marketing, and really about, if you just sincerely try to help people and connect with them, that's how you build a community where you can support each other and you can have a sustainable businesses. And she taught me so much. And I like to refer to her as my blogging mama, because I made so much progress in the first year that I knew her that I'm like, man, if I hadn't met that woman and listened to her, because I argued with her for 2 years before I started the Blind Blogger. She finally wore me down and convinced me.
Yeah.
And it really just comes down to the fact that you have an excuse and don't use it. That's why you need to do more. And it's funny. When I started the Midway Marketplace, I was like, man, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. This is such a big deal for me. I don't know if I'll ever be any good at this. And now here I am, 13 years later, 6 years after starting the blindblogger.net. And it's like, man, if I had known when I was 20 what I was capable of, who knows where I'd be right now,
Yeah.
But you have to learn those lessons in their own time. And, I had to learn a lot of hard lessons, when the loss of the vision, the failure of the family business, a couple of incredibly bad business deals where I didn't get paid for my work, lots of things along the way. And we talked about my third thing, which is finding the positive. And like I say, it takes practice. I tell people to start off by making a list of things that were good yesterday or that have been good so far this morning. And I mean, people, experiences, events, petting your dog, looking at a gray sky and trying to see some sunshine in it. And I like to use this expression when it comes to the positive and trying to find it, that finding the positive in your life is just like finding anything else that's lost. It's just like finding your TV remote. You know it's there somewhere, and you keep looking until you find it. And if you can't find it, and if you can't find it on your own, you call the family in to help you look. And then usually,
that's great.
And then usually what happens is you've got a living room that looks like a tornado went through it, but you've got your remote and you've got your cold drink and you're watching your favorite show on TV.
Right. Yeah, I always tell my kids when they've lost something, I'm like, it's not going to come find you. You have to go find it. If it's not where you thought it was, then you need to look in other places. And when you've looked in all the places that make sense, you need to look somewhere that doesn't make sense. And find it there,
which is, I appreciate you saying, that's exactly what Conan Doyle wrote from Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes is credited with the quote of, after you've eliminated all the impossible or improbable, whatever remains must be the truth. So when you get up in the morning, say to yourself, something good is going to happen today. For example, I know it's not a good thing to check my email when a little bit after I get up in the morning. But when I open that inbox, I'm thinking there's going to be at least one email in here somewhere from a good friend, an opportunity, or maybe even some spam that's interesting. It just hey, and the difference between spam and an opportunity is your attitude when you open your inbox. So
that's a good one to remember.
Yeah. I need to trademark that.
Yeah, you do. And I like what you said a while back. You're saying so many good things, it's hard for me to keep up with all of them. But no, it's okay. You said you have an excuse, but you don't use it. That just really struck me, because we all have an excuse of some sort, but that doesn't mean we have to use it. That doesn't mean we have to claim it. We can just say, forget that excuse and press on. I really like that little nugget of encouragement and truth that you dropped in there. And we kind of kept going, but I'm like, oh, wait, I got to remember that one. That's good.
That's one of those times where it would help if I could see your facial expressions. Then I would have known, hey, Max, she wants you to slow down.
Yeah. No. That's good.
But you're right. It's a decision. And over the years, I have decided not to let the vision loss keep me from going where I want to go. And sometimes that has meant finding unique solutions. And quite often it's meant finding solutions that maybe didn't make me look so good. I will do whatever I have to do that isn't illegal to get to my next goal. And if it makes me look bad, if it embarrasses me, if I have to look silly, if I have to beg, if I have to, if I have to tell somebody a story, which is what my dad used to do a lot. He was a great storyteller. If whatever I have to do, I'm going to get there. And this is another thing I like to share with people. Life ain't the Olympics. They're not going to give you style points. So stop trying to win them.
True.
Just, if it's distasteful, if it's dirty, if it's greasy, if it's just something you don't want to do right this minute, but in your heart, it will get you closer to your goal. Those are the things I do.
I can identify with so much of what you're saying because, I felt like, man, I have some things to share. I want to write a book. I have no clue how to write a book. I just figured it out. And, then I started a blog. If you're an author, you need a blog. So I did that.
Yep.
And then I was trying to get more speaking opportunities like you and I were talking about earlier. And so I started trying to get on people's podcasts. And then I'm like, hey, I could do podcasting. I have no idea how. So I just jump in. So,
we could be related because,
yeah.
That's pretty much how I do it. Somebody will say, hey, Max, if you ever tried to do this, or Max, you have a website. Now you have to have a blog, or Max, you're a great podcast guest. When are you going to start your own podcast? So a lot of my experience or adventure, let's call it, has been other people's suggestions. It's been opportunities that shown up that maybe I wasn't exactly looking for, but it was something I'm like, this could be fun. Right now, I like to joke with people that I have a list of things I won't do. These are things that are on my ain't no way I'm going to do them list, which is skydiving, bungee jumping, swimming with sharks, mountain climbing, whitewater rafting above a 1 or a 2, maybe with an experienced guide. I'm not going to go skeet shooting or hunting. I will go fishing, but those are just some of the things I ain't never going to do.
Well, that's funny because I've done some of those, and some of those I want to do. A couple of years ago, I went skydiving. I've always wanted to do that. It was so much fun.
Well, my brother is planning to go skydiving on his birthday next year because he wants to do it before he turns 50. And so he has challenged me to do it. And I've told him, And I said, look, man, the smallest I've ever been in my life was 262 pounds. And that was 3 years ago. But you have to get down to 250 to jump. So I've told him, I don't see how that's possible. He's like, I'm going to do it. I'm like, so I may, for my brother, I may do it, but let's not make that a social media thing just yet. Okay.
No promises.
No promise. But I mean, but if we're going to do it, I told him if we're going to do it, we have to promote the heck out of this and get a GoFundMe page or a Patreon page or something. We got to get paid.
When I went skydiving, we were in the jump plane going up, and I asked the guy who was with me, I said, has anybody ever, balked on you? Like, they get ready to go and they're like, change their mind. Never mind, let's go land. He said, not very many people, but sometimes it gets close to the door and they kind of have hesitations. He's like, we'll just circle the plane around, and we talk a little bit. And he's like, then people still won't, if they don't listen to his reason of, this is safe. Your life depends on me and I'm tied to you. So therefore I'm not going to do anything dumb, gives them all this logic. He's like, if that doesn't work, then I just tell him, we can go land the plane, but I'm not going to give you a refund. And he said, they always jump. They always jump when they're not going to get a refund. So I think we just need to live life like we're not getting a refund. We just need to jump.
I like that. Yeah. And I'm kind of tight with money. So I think that would definitely work on me if I'd already if they could get me to the point where I've already put up my money, then I think it might could happen. But like I said, we need a GoFundMe page or something if I'm going to do it. Or at least I need to find me a nonprofit that's willing to work with me so I can raise some money or something. But I actually have a friend. That would be great. Maybe Foundation Fighting Blindness. I have a good friend named Scott Mulvaney who has a podcast called Live the Fuel, and we've known each other for several years now. He used to be a wilderness firefighter. He has jumped out of more planes than I've ridden in. That's that's what he did for a living. And he keeps telling me the next time I'm in Philadelphia, he wants me to go jump with him. So I can't think of anybody else that I would trust more. So if anybody's going to talk me into it, it might be Scott.
There you go.
This is all beside the point, because we're talking about what's your excuse and overcoming your excuses. But I think it's important to sometimes go, hey, I've done a lot of things that I never thought I was capable of, a lot of times because people challenged or dared me. But the great thing is once you start making progress, once you do some things that are out of your comfort zone, like my starting a website with HTML, or leaving to travel the country for 6 weeks with $500 in my pocket, or whatever it was, you get to a point where you say, okay, I could do this. There's nothing inherently dangerous in me doing it. It's not really life threatening for me to do it. It's not really business threatening for me to do it. But does it get me to my goal at this moment? And at that point, you have the authority, the power, the right to say no, and it's one of the hardest lessons to learn, no matter what your passion is, whether it's a creative, a nonprofit, a business, a podcast. The hardest thing you will ever have to learn is when to say no. It's not right for me right this minute.
Yep. I struggle with that one all the time. My husband's always like, stop volunteering for things. Well, if there's a need and I feel like I could fill it, then I almost feel like I've got to do this. And he's like, no, if you don't, somebody else will too. You don't have to do all the things. So
yeah, that's true. And sometimes you can fill the need by introducing them to somebody else that could fill that need, just to help you out there a little. But yeah, it's difficult to learn how to say no. But the thing you have to remember is when you say yes to everything, you're doing two things. One, you're emptying your personal energy tank, and you only have so much time and energy and passion. So sometimes saying no is basically self-protection. You're basically defending yourself and giving yourself the ability to keep doing stuff for yourself, your friends, your family, your community. So sometimes saying no is really great. And the other thing that's really cool about saying no is a lot of times if you say no to something that maybe isn't right this minute, you have the opportunity and the space to say yes to something that's even better.
That's true. I kind of flip that around. I always say, when I say yes to something, I'm automatically saying no to something. What am I saying no to when I agree to say? So I kind of think of it backwards, but the same thing.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like one of my favorite expressions. Me and my dad and my family, we think of this backwards. Most people say, why not go ahead and do it? Why not try? Why not ask? Because the worst thing that can happen is they can say no. But in my family, we have an expression. We say, if you don't ask, they can't say yes. So my dad kind of turned that around, and it was his way of motivating me to continue cold calling and later cold emailing to try to fill our calendar so our carnival would be able to make enough money to support us. So I get tired of calling these fair boards up and festival organizers and telling them I had 8 rides and them telling me to call them back when I had 15 or 20 or 30. And my dad would just go, hey, Max, if you don't ask, they can't say yes. Now stop complaining and make the next call.
Try again. Yeah.
Try again. Yeah. So, and that's another one of those things. I learned it in the carnival business, but it really helps out in today's world. And I want people to know this. Some of the best things I've gotten were things I asked for or things where I submitted a form to, and I knew in my heart when I sent it off that I wasn't qualified, that they shouldn't say yes, but they did. And I had some amazing, like, for example, my third book is about my travels to New York City as one of the Amtrak writers in residence. When I sent off that submission form, I had just read some of the bios of some of their past winners. And when I pressed send, I was humming the music from Sesame Street. Which one of these is not like the other? And I can't tell you how surprised I was when I got that call at 9 o'clock at night telling me, Mr. Ivy, you have won. Now, where do you want to go?
Oh, wow.
So, so this whole thing of if you don't ask, they can't say yes, it applies to prayer, meditation, submission forms, emails, phone calls, personal conversations. But here's the cool thing I've learned. The more time you do it, the more times people are going to say yes. And the more comfortable you get asking, the more comfortable you get with yourself and your story and your abilities, to the point that you will get to where people will offer you opportunities or they'll say yes when you knew they should have said no.
Mm.
And so again, it's one of those things you have to practice. You have to do it on a regular basis. And I encourage people to do it to me. I love it when people turn my stuff around on me. Like, a couple weeks ago, a friend of mine said, "Hey, Max, have you ever thought about trying to write a song?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, what's your excuse?" So I've now written 3 verses. I've now written 3 verses of a song I call "If You Don't Ask," and eventually I'm going to put it out into the world. So
I love
I
that.
love it when people turn my stuff around on me. So, if you don't ask, they can't say yes. Use the contact form on my website and say, "Hey, Max, I'm so-and-so. This is what I'm doing or trying to do or have done, and it didn't work out." Whatever your story is, I want to hear it. And say, "Hey, I heard you on the podcast. I loved what you said. And, I'm hoping you can encourage or inspire me or introduce me to somebody that can help me get further on my path." So it's the email is just ask@theblindblogger.net if they have any trouble finding the contact form, because I am not one of those people who thinks you have to be ready to book me, hire me, or buy from me to talk to me. That's not the way I do it. I know there are a lot of other people who are that way. So I want to make sure people know, hey, I'm approachable. My email address is just ask for a reason. So I do want to hear from people. I'm hoping there'll be some comments on this that I can reply to, and that people will reach out to you or me as a result of this. I mean, hey, don't forget, the host is doing a podcast. She is sharing herself, her experiences, and her lessons with you along the way. So she might be a great person to reach out to and start to become friends with. Just a hint.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love all the connections I've made with the podcasting of just, it's as an introvert, I don't really like small talk, but I've realized as podcasting, like I can just get right into, hey, let's talk about the meat of, what's your life passion and your story and what things have you overcome. And I love that. Like we just kind of do the introduction and then we can just have a real deep and meaningful conversation. And so I've made a lot of great connections this way. And I love it when people reach out and do that. I love having that conversation as well.
Yeah. And one of the most important things I teach my podcast guest students is that the most important part of a podcast interview is not the interview. It's the time before you go live, the time after you go live. It's the emails you send before and after the podcast. This is an opportunity to spend 30 minutes to an hour or so with somebody you've never met before, but you kind of like them because you were asked to be on their podcast or they asked you to be on their podcast. And so, you get to spend that time with them, and you have you're beginning a friendship, a connection, and you have the freedom to offer to help them or to ask them to help you. And a lot of times I've found that when a podcaster is trying to do something new, they will either ask for your help or your advice, or they'll invite you to take part. I mean, a perfect example is I was recently included in a book called Our Defining Moments by Melanie Warner. It was a collaboration of 40 authors sharing their stories of stories of survival was the subtitle. So I was part of an international best-selling book, and that happened because of a conversation after my podcast interview was over.
As we start to wrap up our conversation, can you go over your 3 main points again? I know we talked a lot about them individually and stuff, but I feel like repetition is good to get it cemented into our heads better.
And I agree with you. And I think repetition is also good to help get it into my mind better, because, the more you say it, the more comfortable you become with it, and the more focused you can be in the next interview. Because to me, this is also a learning experience. I try to have aha moments along with the host or along with their audience.
Right.
And usually I do, thank goodness. So these are the 3 main principles or techniques I've used over the years to accomplish my goals and overcome the adversities that I've faced. And there are 1, decide to find solutions instead of making excuses. And the important part there is decision. It takes a conscious effort.
Yeah.
2, find the freedom to ask for help and accept help when offered. The important thing there is a lot of people will want to help you if you sincerely ask and they can see that you're trying. And I have an expression here. I like to say, when you refuse to ask, you rob the other person of the joy they would have received from helping you. So
yeah, that's good. You have a lot of good things to share.
Yeah, I know. It's a life well lived or misspent, depending on which way you look at it. But yeah, if you refuse to ask, you rob the other person of the joy they would have received from helping you. So being free to ask for help and accept help when offered is the second one. And the third one is being determined to find the positive in your life every day, even if you have to make a list, even if you have to say, I know it's here, and you have to say, I know it's here somewhere, I'm going to find it. And the great thing about finding or looking for positive things is the more you think about them, the more you remember them and celebrate them, the more of them you will find and the more of them you will create. So again, be determined to find the positive in every day. So decide to find solutions, ask for help, determined to find the positive. Those are my three key things that have helped me to get to this point. And I hope that they will unlock that door that's been holding you back and let you take a few steps on that path of yours. And I look forward to hearing some of y'all's experiences, because one of the things that keeps me going and helps me to continue doing the work is I feel an obligation to continue showing up for those people that have put their faith in me, who have followed me and encouraged me, and look forward to the next thing that I'll do that they can see as entertainment, education, or inspiration, improve their lives just a little bit. So I know that I have an obligation to continue being an inspiration, example, whatever you want to call me. I just have one condition, and it's very simple. If you're going to call me an inspiration, if you're going to say, if Max can do it, then what's my excuse? Then I want to know what I inspired you to do. What excuse did I help you overcome? Because to me, inspiration without action is meaningless.
Yep. Yes, that's very true. I love that. So I really admire the work that you've done, the things that you've overcome, and your eagerness to share that with other, I can just hear it in your voice, how you really just desire to help other people to overcome their stuff and get their excuses out of the way so they can go do that thing that they were made to do. If people are interested in connecting with you, let's remind them again where they can find you.
Right. They can go to theblindblogger.net. That's theblindblogger.net. On Twitter, I'm at Maxwell Ivy. Facebook, Maxwell Ivy. I also have a What's Your Excuse group on Facebook. Maxwell Ivy on LinkedIn. The only place I'm the blind blogger officially is on Instagram. But the What's Your Excuse show, you can find it on theblindblogger.net. You can also tell Alexa or Google to play What's Your Excuse, and they will give you the latest episode of my podcast over there. Very happy that I've finally been added to iHeart, another place where people can get my podcast, the What's Your Excuse show. And hopefully there will be a What's Your Excuse podcast network coming very soon, where I will be helping to promote other podcast hosts who have a disability and help some aspiring podcasters that have disabilities launch their own podcast. So I'm looking forward to that, the What's Your Excuse network. I don't have a website for it yet, but when I do, it'll be on theblindblogger.net. And, you told me to mention some project that I'm working on. And of course, it's hard for me because I got so much stuff going on at different times during my day, y'all, okay, at different days of the week. But I would say the most important thing that I'm doing that people that are watching this can take part in is I offer an 8-week course where I train people to be great podcast guests. And I also offer a service where I book people on podcasts, and then I promote their interviews on social media and to my email list. And I also give them regular feedback on their interviews as far as how they're doing, areas where they can improve themselves. So those are the two things I'm doing. The course is called 8 Weeks to Be a Podcast Guest Rockstar, and it's at theblindblogger.net/8 weeks, the number 8. So theblindblogger.net/8 weeks for my podcast guest training course. And basically, if you just go over to theblindblogger.net and subscribe to the email list, you'll always know what's going on.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that with us. I'm sure that there will be listeners who will be eager to reach out to you and to hear more from you, because you have so much wisdom. It's hard to pack it all into just 30 minutes. So we might have to do a part 2. No, that's great. It's great. Don't be sorry.
I just sometimes feel a little embarrassed about, what all I have to share. Sometimes I just think, Max, you can't have this much in you, because if you did, you'd be unlivable. I mean, but hearing you say it, is a great reminder. This is a perfect example of what I was talking about earlier in the show. When you meet people who have wisdom, who have experience like you do, and they tell you things about yourself, you do two things. You can fight with them, or you can say yes and thank you, and then try to absorb it. So thank you for helping me see some of these things that maybe I just don't realize that I'm doing, or that I have to offer to people. So thank you so much for that.
I think most of us in general, don't realize how amazing we are. They're just, I know I'm my own worst critic. And I think things that, like, the most amazing things about other people are often the things that come so easy to them that they don't even realize they're doing it necessarily.
Yeah.
Here's just a silly example, but in college, I struggled in physics, and my roommate was an ace at physics. And I'm like, hey, help me with it. How do you do this problem? She goes, I don't know. I just did it. It just came naturally to her. She's like, it's just, like breathing. You just work the physics problem. I'm like, well, that doesn't help me, because I'm struggling. And what you do to me looks like magic of how you figure out this physics problem. So
yeah, and that's an interesting thing to bring up, because with people that have disabilities, generally people either see us as someone to be pitied or as superheroes. And me, because I show up and just do the next thing in front of me, people, they think I'm amazing and awesome, and most of the time I agree with them. But there are days when I'm like, I have days where I'm like, these people are my friends. They know me. Maybe they're not telling me the truth, but
yeah,
most of the time I am the guy. Most of the time I am the guy on my logo, which I don't know if y'all have seen my logo, but basically it's me wearing a cape in front of some buildings in New York City, and across the chest it says The Blind Blogger, and along the bottom it says, "What's your excuse?" So,
yeah.
and that was created by my graphic artist, Sandra Henry. And basically, I didn't tell her anything about what I wanted. I just told her who I was and some of the stuff I did. And she went to the internet. She went to my blog. She started asking people about me. She said, Max, this is who you are. This is how the world sees you. And I'm like, wow. And I appreciate it. And just one last thing. I know we're over time, but I've been doing interviews since 2013, because I really didn't have a way to meet people any other way. I didn't have good transportation options, and there's no mass transit in Houston, or at least not in my part of Houston. So I started doing interviews, and basically, without podcasts and radio shows, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to share my story and promote my stuff. So really, without people like you, there wouldn't be The Blind Blogger. There wouldn't be a Mr. What's Your Excuse? There wouldn't be a podcast. None of this stuff would have happened without people like you who have invested their time, their money, their energy, their passion to give me a platform. So I just want you to know how much I appreciate you and your part in my continuing journey.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate your courage to step up on the platform and share what you have with the world.
Yeah. If you fall off it, it's a long way down.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for chatting with us today. This has just really been a blessing to me. And I've learned so much listening to you, some things I'm going to take away. And I appreciate you spending your time with us today.
Oh, I enjoy doing it. I tell people all the time, the most fun, most energizing, most productive thing I do to build my brand and my platform is podcast interviews, because I get to have great conversations with interesting people who get me, or who can at least understand me. I have an opportunity to make a new friend. And when the half hour, whatever is over with, the rest of my day is like, okay, what is it? Bring it on. I'm ready.
Yeah.
Because I have this energy that you can't get from anything else besides personal interaction, talking about subjects you have in common. So, this is one of the reasons why I keep doing them, why I try to tell other people to do them, because yeah, you can get some promotional benefit, but the emotional benefit, because when I strap my headphones on, I'm like, okay, no matter what happens the rest of the day, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
So thank you again. And I really do appreciate being on the show.
Yes, thank you. It was a pleasure having you.